Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to finally compare two of the 25 caliber Weatherby cartridges. One of my personal favorites on the left, the 257 Weatherby versus the brand new 25 Weatherby RPM. Which one comes out on top? Let's find out. When we're talking traditional hunting distances out to 400 yards, there really isn't a cartridge that can be beat as far as flat trajectory than the 257 Weatherby Magnum. Now, this cartridge was made in 1944, and it's one of the original Weatherby cartridges, Roy Weatherby's personal favorite, and it is the definition of flat shooting, but it is also the definition of a barrel burner. I always say, if you're going to buy a Ferrari, don't complain about the gas mileage or burning out the tires. So that's what this is. It's a hot rod. It's a lot of fun to shoot, pretty easy to shoot, and I would say it's also a pretty accurate cartridge. Then we have the 25 Weatherby RPM. Now this case is based off a lengthened, 284 Winchester. That's what it really is. So it's rebated. That's what RPM stands for, is rebated precision magnum. So what makes this really that special? Well, it's got the fast twist, a 7.5 twist. You can shoot all the high BC bullets, which admittedly, there's not a ton of them right now, but I think that's going to change in a little bit. And this 25 Weatherby RPM is quite a bit more efficient than the 257 Weatherby. It's not going to be able to keep up with velocity-wise as far as muzzle velocity, but because it's shooting the high BC bullets, it catches up to the 257 Weatherby, and, it kind of handily beats it. And we'll show you that. All right, so we've got GRT pulled up. I've got the 257 Weatherby. Let's change this to 65,000 PSI. All right, my personal case capacity is 87.5 grains. And this is my personal load development with 110 AccuBond. I have it at 3.240, 26-inch barrel. Most 257 Weatherbys are 26-inch. I would recommend 26-inch minimum, and if you can, go longer. Again, nozzle AccuBond, and then what we're picking is 565. This seems, or Retumbo is about the ideal powder with a 110 grain bullet. We are going to max out at basically 3,535 feet per second. And so that's moving really good. So much your estimated energy is 3,055 foot-pounds. So this is really flat shooting. But how does the 25 Weatherby RPM compare with the same bullet weight? Let's find out. Okay, we got the 25 Weatherby RPM pulled up in Gordon's reloading tool. So I have 74.4 grains of water capacity in my case. I measured after it fired. And then we're going to load it to 3.30. And then I'm going to use what's common. You could get it in a 26-inch barrel. But in factory guns, the longest you're going to be able to get is a 24. And we're going to use the exact same bullet. I know it's not ideal for a 25 Weatherby RPM to be shooting a stumpy little 110 grain bullet. We're going to use N560, and then we're loading it to the max, and we're going to be right around 3380 with 2,790 foot-pounds, 2784. Depends how hard you push it. So it's about 150 feet per second slower, and that's just how it is with that smaller case. So the reality is, if we only use the exact same bullets, the 257 Weatherby would handily beat the 25 Weatherby RPM. But that's not really the whole purpose of the 25 Weatherby RPM. The whole purpose is taking advantage of that really fast twist, now 7.5 versus 1 and 10, and shooting bullets that you cannot shoot in a 257 Weatherby with a 1 in 10 twist. Now we're going to check out to see how it compares. So first, do a Barnes comparison, and then I'm going to do a ELD-X comparison. All right, let's look at the ballistics for a 101 LRX and 257 Weatherby Mag loaded to basically its top velocity. We're using M565. Going up to 65,000 PSI, we can get 3,670 feet per second. That's so fast. Muzzle energy is pretty insane for this little 25 caliber bullet, 3,021 foot-pounds. It's like the energy of a 30-06. All right, 200, we're going to have bolt going 3135 and 2,204 foot-pounds of energy. 400, it's going 2,661 feet per second, 1,589 foot-pounds. This is all at sea level, by the way. And then in drop, that's in MOA 3.78, in wind drift in a 10 mile per hour wind, 2.44 in MOA. Then out to 600, it's going 2,234 feet per second, 1,119 foot-pounds. 7.96 MOA in drop, 3.94 in wind drift. As I said, there's not going to be much that beats the 257 Weatherby in drop. It's just such a flat shooting cartridge. All right, 25 Weatherby RPM with the 117 LRX. With a 24-inch barrel, you can get 3,300 feet per second. Energy, 2,830. So we're about 150 foot-pounds less of energy at the muzzle, but that's going to change real quick. 200 yards, bolt's going 29.17. It's quite a bit slower, but we're already matching and just barely exceeding the energy at 200 yards over a 257 Weatherby Magnum. 400 yards, the bolt's going 25.65 feet per second. So almost 100 feet per second slower than the 257 Weatherby. But look at that, shooting that heavier bullet, higher BC bullet, well over 100 foot-pounds of energy more. 1710 versus 1589. Now this will not be as flat shooting. It's 4.58 MOA in drop at 400 versus 3.78. And then this will handily beat it in wind drift, 2.08 versus 2.44 at 600. Bolt's going 2,240 feet per second, so it's going now just as fast as the 257 Weatherby, and 1,303 foot-pounds. So now it is almost 200 more foot-pounds of energy than the 257 Weatherby. Again, it's not going to be as flat shooting, 9.16 versus 7.96, but the wind drift, it's a big advantage. 3.30 versus that 3.94. Now, this 257 Weatherby is so flat shooting, it is an absolute blast to shoot it out at distance. I've shot this 110 grain bullet out to 1,000 yards, and as long as it's not super windy, it is so fun. It is so flat shooting. To kind of give you a perspective, okay? Now, bear in mind, I'm shooting out at like 5,600 feet of elevation. This is only 5 mils to 1,000 yards. That is ridiculously flat shooting. We're gonna now look at the ballistics for the ELD-X bullets. So the 257 Weatherby can shoot a 110 ELD-X, and we are topping out at 3,535 feet per second, 3,053 foot-pounds. 200, 3,085, 2,325 foot-pounds. 400, bullets going 2,679 feet per second, 1,753 foot-pounds. And again, this is an MOA, 3.96 in drop, 2.15 in a 10 mile per hour wind. 600, bullets going 2307, 1,301 foot-pounds. 8.12 MOA in drop at 600, 3.44 in wind drift. Very respectable, very flat shooting. 25 Weatherby RPM with the new 128 ELD-X. And with a 24-inch barrel, you can max out at 3,200 feet per second. Your energy, 2,911 foot-pounds, so pretty close to the Weatherby, the 257 Weatherby. 200, 2,890 feet per second, 2,374 foot-pounds. So already at 200, we're 50 more foot-pounds with the 25 RPM. At 400, bullets going 2601, still a little bit slower, but 1,923 foot-pounds of energy, almost 200 more foot-pounds. 4.72 in drop versus 3.96, but we're starting to see an advantage in wind drift, 1.74 versus 2.15. At 600, bullets going 2,330 feet per second. So now at 600, the heavier bullet is going faster than the 257 Weatherby, 1,543 foot-pounds versus 1,301. So almost 250 more foot-pounds of energy. 9.22 versus 8.12. As I said, the 25 RPM is never going to be flatter shooting than a 257 Weatherby. And then 2.74 in wind drift. So quite the advantage versus 3.44. That's about 6 inches. Now, the title and my thumbnail of this video basically saying the 25 Weatherby RPM makes the 257 Weatherby obsolete. Well, those are kind of the numbers to prove it. Now, do I think Weatherby's 25 Weatherby RPM is going to outsell the 257 Weatherby? Very unlikely. You know, the 257 Weatherby is still one of the best selling Weatherby cartridges. In fact, it comes in second to the 300 Weatherby. But if you're wanting longer barrel life, better downrange ballistics, the 25 Weatherby RPM, yeah, it handily beats the 257 Weatherby.